Let me start with a simple question. You're going to answer it quickly. Don't overthink it. A bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? If you answered 10 cents, you're wrong, but you're in good company. Over 50% of students at Harvard, MIT, and Princeton got this wrong too. The correct answer is 5 cents. The bat costs $1.05, together $1.10. Why did your brain jump to 10 cents? Because you have two systems of thinking, and the fast one just tricked you. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics and one of the founders of behavioral economics, spent decades studying how we think and make decisions. And what he discovered is revolutionary and unsettling. Your mind is not one unified system making rational decisions. It's two systems, often in conflict, and the one you trust most is actually the one that gets you into trouble. System 1 thinks fast. It's automatic, intuitive, effortless. It jumps to conclusions. It sees patterns that aren't there. It's confident even when it's wrong, and it runs most of your life. System 2 thinks slow. It's deliberate, analytical, effortful. It can solve complex problems. It checks System 1's work, but it's lazy. It only activates when absolutely necessary. The problem? System 1 is running the show most of the time, and it's full of biases, shortcuts, and systematic errors. In this audiobook, we're diving into thinking fast and slow. We're covering the two systems and how they work, the cognitive biases that distort your judgment, why you're overconfident in your predictions, why loss aversion controls your decisions, why you see patterns in randomness, and how to actually make better decisions despite your brain's limitations. This isn't just theory. Understanding how you think is the key to thinking better, to making better decisions, to avoiding costly mistakes. If you're ready to see how your mind really works and why it fails so predictably, let's begin. Part 1. The two systems, fast and slow. The foundation of everything in this book is understanding that you have two systems of thinking. Kahneman calls them System 1 and System 2. System 1, the fast thinker. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort, and with no sense of voluntary control. Examples of System 1 at work. Detect that one object is more distant than another. Orient to the source of a sudden sound. Complete the phrase, bread and... Make a disgust face when shown a horrible picture. Drive a car on an empty road. Understand simple sentences. Read words on large billboards. Notice these things happen automatically. You don't decide to do them. They just happen. System 1 is your intuition, your gut feeling, your first impression. It's incredibly fast and usually helpful. It kept your ancestors alive by detecting threats instantly. But System 1 has major flaws. It's built on associations and patterns. It jumps to conclusions. It creates coherent stories, even from incomplete information. And it's overconfident. System 2, the slow thinker. System 2 allocates attention to effortful mental activities. These demand concentration. The operations of System 2 are disrupted when attention is drawn away. Examples of System 2 at work? Brace for the starter gun in a race. Focus on the voice of a particular person in a crowded, loud room. Look for a woman with white hair. Search memory to identify a surprising sound. Maintain a faster walking speed than natural. Monitor the appropriateness of your behavior in a social situation. Count the occurrences of the letter A in a page of text. Tell someone your phone number. park in a narrow space. Compare two washing machines for overall value. Fill out a tax form. Check the validity of a complex logical argument. These activities require effort. They're deliberate. You have to consciously choose to do them. System 2 is your rational mind, your analytical processor. It can handle complexity. It can do math. It can plan. It can reason. The problem, System 2 is lazy. It requires effort and energy. Your brain doesn't want to use it unless absolutely necessary. How the two systems work together. Here's the key dynamic. System 2 thinks it's in charge, that it makes the decisions, that it chooses when to act. But System 2 is actually more of a supporting character. System 1 continuously generates suggestions, intuitions, impressions, and feelings. If endorsed by System 2, impressions and intuitions turn into beliefs, and impulses turn into voluntary actions. Most of the time, System 2 just rubber stamps what System 1 produces. You're cruising on autopilot, trusting your intuition. Only when System 1 runs into difficulty does it call for help, and only then does System 2 engage. The problem? System 1 has systematic biases, predictable errors. It answers easier questions than the one you asked. It's influenced by irrelevant information, and System 2 is too lazy to check the work most of the time. The bat and ball problem explained. Let's go back to our opening question. Why did you think the ball costs 10 cents? System 1 quickly suggested an answer. $1.10 total. Bat costs $1 more, 10 cents. That felt right. System 1 is satisfied, and System 2, being lazy, didn't bother to check it. It just accepted System 1's answer. But if System 2 actually engaged and did the math, it would discover if ball is 10 cents, bat is $1.10. Total $1.20. That's wrong. The correct answer requires System 2 to slow down and calculate. Ball is 5 cents. Bat is $1.05. Total $1.10. Bat costs exactly $1 more than ball. Most people never activate System 2. They trust System 1, and they get it wrong. This happens constantly, in bigger decisions, in important judgments. System 1 jumps to conclusions, System 2 doesn't check, and you make predictable mistakes. The illusion of understanding. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You believe you're a rational person making thoughtful decisions, but most of your life is run by System 1. Fast, automatic, intuitive, and often wrong. System 2 creates the illusion that you're in control, that you're thinking things through. But System 2 is usually just rationalizing what System 1 already decided. Kahneman isn't saying you're stupid. He's saying your brain uses shortcuts to save energy. And those shortcuts, while often useful, create systematic biases and errors. The first step to better thinking? Recognizing when you're using System 1 versus System 2, and knowing when to deliberately slow down and engage your analytical mind. Part 2. Cognitive Biases and Heuristics. Now let's explore the specific ways System 1 tricks you. These are called heuristics and biases, mental shortcuts that usually work but sometimes fail spectacularly. Anchoring effect. You're more influenced by irrelevant information than you think. Kahneman did an experiment. He spun a wheel of fortune that landed on a random number. Then he asked people, what percentage of African nations are in the United Nations? The random number from the wheel influenced their answers. If the wheel showed 10, people guessed around 25%. If it showed 65, people guessed around 45%. The wheel was obviously random and irrelevant, but it anchored their thinking. This happens constantly. The first number you hear becomes an anchor. Real estate agents show you expensive houses first to anchor high. Negotiators throw out extreme first offers to anchor the range. You think you're immune. You're not. Anchoring works even when you know it's happening. Availability heuristic. You judge frequency and probability by how easily examples come to mind. Kahneman asks, are there more words in English that start with K or have K as the third letter? Most people say words starting with K because they're easier to recall. Kitchen, kangaroo, keyboard. But actually, there are 3 times more words with K as the third letter. Acknowledge, awkward, makeup. Your System 1 uses availability as a proxy for frequency. What comes to mind easily feels more common. This bias explains why people overestimate rare events. Terrorist attacks, plane crashes, shark attacks. These are vivid and memorable, so they feel more likely than they are. Meanwhile, common causes of death, like heart disease, don't make headlines, so people underestimate them. You base decisions on how easily examples come to mind, not on actual statistics, and media coverage distorts your perception of risk. Representativeness heuristic. You judge probability by how well something matches a stereotype. Kahneman presents this description. Steve is very shy and withdrawn, invariably helpful, but with little interest in people or the world of reality. A meek and tidy soul, he has a need for order and structure. Is Steve more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? Most people say librarian, because Steve matches the librarian stereotype. But there are 20 times more male farmers than male librarians in the population. So even if Steve matches the librarian stereotype, he's statistically more likely to be a farmer. System 1 ignores base rates. It focuses on how representative Steve seems, and it jumps to conclusions. This causes major errors in judgment. You see someone in a suit and assume they're successful. You meet someone who's articulate and assume they're intelligent. You're judging by superficial matches to stereotypes instead of actual probability. Confirmation bias. You seek information that confirms what you already believe, and you ignore information that contradicts it. Kahneman explains this through a famous experiment. You're shown 4 cards with the following visible: E, K, 4, and 7. The rule: if a card has a vowel on one side, it must have an even number on the other side. Which cards must you turn over to test this rule? Most people say E and 4. That seems logical. Check if E has an even number. Check if 4 has a vowel. But the correct answer is E and 7. You need to check if E has an even number, confirming the rule, and if 7 has a vowel on the other side, which would violate the rule. Most people only look for confirmation. They don't look for ways the rule might be false. This happens in real life constantly. You believe something, you seek evidence that supports it. You dismiss evidence against it. You build a coherent story that confirms your existing beliefs. System 1 wants consistency. It doesn't want to be proven wrong, so it cherry-picks information that fits the narrative. Overconfidence bias. You're more confident in your judgments than you should be. Kahneman studied expert predictions extensively. Financial analysts, political pundits, medical professionals, even psychologists making clinical judgments. The finding? Experts are barely more accurate than random chance, but they're extremely confident in their predictions. Why? System 1 generates a coherent story from available information. The story feels complete. It feels right, so you feel confident. But the story is built on limited information. You don't know what you don't know. System 1 doesn't flag missing information. It just creates the best story from what's available. This is why hindsight bias exists. After an event happens, you look back and think, I knew that would happen, but you didn't. You're constructing a coherent story in retrospect. In real time, the future was uncertain, but System 1 creates a narrative that makes the outcome seem inevitable. The halo effect. Your impression of one quality influences your judgment of other qualities. If you like someone, you're more likely to think they're intelligent, competent, and trustworthy. If you dislike someone, you're more likely to think they're stupid, incompetent, and dishonest. Kahneman shows this in performance reviews. If a manager rates an employee highly on one dimension, they rate them highly on all dimensions, even unrelated ones. System 1 wants consistency. If something is good in one way, it must be good in other ways. If something is bad in one way, it must be bad in other ways. This causes major errors. You meet someone attractive and assume they're also intelligent. You hear someone speak confidently and assume they're also competent. One positive quality creates a halo that brightens everything else. WYSATI. What you see is all there is. This is Kahneman's acronym for one of System 1's most dangerous tendencies. System 1 builds the best possible story from the information available. It doesn't flag what's missing. It doesn't acknowledge uncertainty. It just creates a coherent narrative and presents it confidently. You make decisions based on what you see. You don't consider what you don't see. You don't think about alternative explanations. You don't realize how incomplete your information is. This is why first impressions are so powerful. System 1 builds a complete picture from minimal information, and that picture is hard to change, even when new information arrives. This is why narratives are so persuasive. A coherent story feels true, even if it's based on cherry-picked information and ignores contradictory evidence. Regression to the mean. This is a statistical concept that people constantly misunderstand because of System 1's need for causal stories. If something is extreme, it will likely be less extreme the next time, not because of any intervention, just because of natural variation. Kahneman gives an example. Fighter pilots who performed exceptionally well on one test were praised. On the next test, they performed worse. Pilots who performed poorly were criticized. On the next test, they performed better. The instructors concluded praise makes performance worse. Criticism makes performance better. Wrong. This is regression to the mean. Extreme performances, good or bad, are partly due to luck. The next performance will naturally be closer to average. But System 1 needs a causal story. It doesn't understand statistics, so it creates a narrative. Praise caused the decline. Criticism caused the improvement. This happens everywhere. A company has a great year. Next year is worse. This success made them complacent. No, it's regression to the mean. A student scores poorly on a test, gets extra tutoring, scores better next time. The tutoring worked. Maybe, or maybe it's just regression to the mean. Understanding regression prevents you from creating false causal narratives. Part 3. Prospect Theory. How you really make decisions. Now we get to Kahneman's Nobel Prize-winning work, Prospect Theory. This explains how you actually make decisions under uncertainty, and it completely contradicts traditional economic theory. Heading end, loss aversion. This is the cornerstone of prospect theory. Losses loom larger than gains. Kahneman offers you a bet. Flip a coin. Heads, you win $150. Tails, you lose $100. This is a great bet. Expected value is positive, but most people refuse it. Why? Because the pain of losing $100 is psychologically stronger than the pleasure of winning $150. Research shows losses are about twice as powerful as equivalent gains. You need to win at least $200 to make most people willing to risk losing $100. This explains so much behavior. Why people hold losing stocks too long, avoiding the loss. Why people reject small risks even with positive expected value. Why the pain of loss drives decisions more than the hope of gain. Heading end, the endowment effect. Once you own something, you value it more than when you didn't own it. Kahneman did an experiment with mugs. Give someone a mug. Ask how much they'd sell it for. Average answer, about $7. Ask people who don't have a mug how much they'd pay for one. Average answer, about $3. Same mug, but owning it makes you value it more than twice as much because giving it up feels like a loss. This explains why you keep stuff you don't use, why you overvalue your house when selling, why car dealers let you test drive. Once it feels like yours, giving it up hurts. Heading end, reference points. Your evaluation of outcomes depends on your reference point, not absolute value. Imagine two scenarios. Scenario A, you get $1,000 unexpectedly. Then you lose $300. Scenario B, you get $700 unexpectedly. Financially, both end with $700, but scenario A feels worse because you experienced a loss relative to having $1,000. Your reference point determines whether something feels like a gain or a loss, and gains and losses feel different even when the final outcome is identical. This explains why salary cuts are so demoralizing, even if the new salary is still high. Your reference point was the higher salary, the cut feels like a loss. This explains why people reject promotions with pay increases if the increase is less than expected. Relative to their reference point, the expected raise, it feels like a loss. Heading end, framing effects. How a choice is presented completely changes your decision, even when the options are logically identical. Kahneman's famous example. Imagine a disease outbreak expected to kill 600 people. Two programs are proposed. Frame 1, positive. Program A, 200 people will be saved. Program B, 1/3 probability all 600 saved, 2/3 probability nobody saved. Most people choose Program A, save 200 for sure. Frame 2, negative. Program C, 400 people will die. Program D, 1/3 probability nobody dies, 2/3 probability all 600 die. Most people choose Program D, risk all dying to avoid certain deaths. But look closely. Program A and Program C are identical. So are Program B and Program D. The only difference is framing. 200 saved versus 400 die. Positive frame makes you risk-averse. Negative frame makes you risk-seeking. Your System 1 reacts to the frame. System 2 doesn't notice they're the same choice. This happens constantly. Politicians, marketers, salespeople, they all use framing. 90% fat-free sounds better than 10% fat. Save $50 sounds better than only costs $200. Heading end, the fourfold pattern. Kahneman identifies 4 scenarios based on probability, high or low, and outcome, gain or loss. Each produces different risk preferences. High probability of gain, risk-averse. You'll take the sure thing. High probability of loss, risk-seeking. You'll gamble to avoid the loss. Low probability of gain, risk-seeking. You'll buy lottery tickets. Low probability of loss, risk-averse. You'll buy insurance. This explains seemingly contradictory behavior. Why people buy lottery tickets, risk-seeking for low probability gains, and insurance, risk-averse for low probability losses at the same time. Rationally, both are bad expected value, but psychologically, they make sense. You overweight low probabilities. You're drawn to the dream of winning. You're terrified of the disaster. Heading end, the sunk cost fallacy. You continue investing in something because you've already invested, even when continuing is irrational. You paid for a movie ticket. 30 minutes in, the movie is terrible. Do you leave or stay? Rationally, the ticket cost is gone. It's a sunk cost. Your only question should be, is watching the rest of this bad movie better than doing something else? But psychologically, you stay, because leaving feels like wasting the money. You're trying to avoid the loss. This happens in bigger decisions. You've spent 2 years on a PhD program and realize it's not for you. You continue because you've invested so much. You've spent 10 years in a relationship that's not working. You stay because you've put in so much time. The time and money are gone. Continuing to invest because of sunk costs is a mistake, but loss aversion makes you do it anyway. Heading end: mental accounting. You treat money differently depending on how you categorize it mentally. You find $50 on the street. You spend it frivolously. It's free money. You earn $50 from overtime work. You save it. It's hard-earned money. Rationally, money is fungible. $50 is $50. But psychologically, you have mental accounts, and you treat each account differently. This causes irrational behavior. You have credit card debt at 18% interest, but you also have a savings account earning 1% interest. Rationally, you should use savings to pay off debt. But mentally, savings is emergency money and debt is spending money. Different accounts, different rules. Understanding mental accounting helps you spot these illogical patterns in your own decisions. Part 4. Implications and how to think better. So, your brain is full of biases. Your intuitions are often wrong, and you're overconfident in your flawed judgments. Now what? Kahneman doesn't offer simple fixes. You can't turn off System 1. It's automatic. But you can learn when to engage System 2. And you can design your environment to make better decisions easier. Recognize when to slow down. The key is recognizing high-stakes decisions where System 1 is likely to make mistakes. When should you deliberately slow down and engage System 2? Complex decisions. Anything with multiple factors, uncertainty, or long-term consequences. Emotional situations. When you're angry, fearful, or excited, System 1 is in overdrive. Pause, cool down, then decide. When stakes are high, financial decisions, career choices, relationship decisions, these deserve slow, careful thinking. When you're tempted by intuition, if something feels right or you just know, that's System 1. Question it. What's the basis for this feeling? When others might have biases, if you're negotiating, someone is trying to exploit your biases. Anchoring, framing. Slow down. Analyze the actual offer, not how it's presented. Check your confidence. When you're confident in a judgment, ask, what's the basis for this confidence? Confidence often comes from a coherent story, not from actual expertise or evidence. System 1 creates narratives that feel complete, but feelings aren't evidence. Kahneman recommends asking, what would I need to see to change my mind? If you can't answer that question, you're not being rational, you're just rationalizing. Use algorithms and checklists. One of Kahneman's most important findings: simple algorithms outperform human experts in many domains. Why? Because algorithms are consistent. They don't have bad days. They don't get tired. They don't get influenced by irrelevant factors. Experts vary. Their judgments change based on mood, recent cases, anchoring, and dozens of other factors. They think they're being thoughtful, but they're being inconsistent. When possible, use decision rules, use checklists, use algorithms. Remove the human inconsistency. This doesn't mean eliminating human judgment entirely. It means structuring decisions to reduce bias. Improve decision hygiene. Kahneman introduces the concept of decision hygiene, ways to reduce noise and bias in judgment. Seek independent opinions. Don't share your view before hearing others. Avoid groupthink and anchoring. Don't be too premature with your intuition. Gather information before forming a judgment. Don't let first impressions dominate. Structure the problem. Break complex decisions into components. Evaluate each separately. Avoid the halo effect. Consider the opposite. Actively search for evidence against your conclusion. Fight confirmation bias. Take the outside view. Instead of thinking about the specifics of this case, think about the broader category. What usually happens in situations like this? Base rates matter. Accept uncertainty. One of the hardest lessons. The world is more random and uncertain than you think. You see patterns everywhere. System 1 connects dots. It creates causal stories. It believes it can predict. But much of life is noise, random variation, luck. You can't predict it. You can't control it. Accepting uncertainty is uncomfortable. System 1 wants certainty. It creates the illusion of understanding even when there is none. Better thinking requires acknowledging what you don't know, embracing uncertainty, and making decisions with humility about your limitations. Think about thinking. The ultimate lesson from Kahneman? Learn to observe your own thinking. Notice when you're using System 1 versus System 2. Catch yourself jumping to conclusions. Question your intuitions. Examine your confidence. You can't eliminate biases, but you can recognize them, and recognition is the first step to correction. This is metacognition, thinking about thinking. It's the closest thing to a solution that Kahneman offers. Your brain will always use shortcuts. System 1 will always be fast, automatic, and sometimes wrong. But if you know how it works, you can catch it in the act and engage System 2 when it matters. Conclusion. So here we are, the complete framework from Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, good, because Kahneman's message is humbling. Your mind is not as rational as you think. Your intuitions are not as reliable as you believe. Your confidence is not as justified as it feels. But here's the thing. Recognizing these limitations is the first step to transcending them. The hard truth. Most people will watch this summary, think, interesting, and change nothing. They'll keep trusting their gut, keep being overconfident, keep making the same predictable mistakes. Why? Because System 1 doesn't like being questioned. It's fast, automatic, and confident, and it doesn't want you to slow down and check its work. But you're not most people, are you? Your challenge. Catch yourself. For the next week, catch yourself using System 1 in important decisions. Notice anchoring. When someone throws out a number first, recognize it's influencing you. Deliberately generate your own estimate before considering theirs. Notice availability bias. When something feels common because examples come to mind easily, ask, is this actually frequent or just memorable? Notice overconfidence. When you feel certain about a prediction, ask, what's my track record on similar predictions? What could I be missing? Notice loss aversion. When you're avoiding a decision because of potential loss, flip it. Would you make this choice if it were framed as a gain? Notice framing. When a choice is presented one way, imagine it presented a different way. Does your preference change? If so, you're being influenced by frame and not substance. Just 1 week. 1 week of observing your thinking. That's all I'm asking. You won't catch everything. System 1 is too fast, but you'll start to see patterns. And seeing them is the first step to changing them. The gift of awareness. Kahneman gave us a gift. He spent a lifetime studying how we think. He won a Nobel Prize for revealing our cognitive flaws, and he wrote this book to share what he learned. The gift is awareness. Once you understand how your mind works, you can't unsee it. You'll catch yourself jumping to conclusions. You'll notice when you're being overconfident. You'll recognize biases in yourself and others. This won't make you perfectly rational. That's impossible. But it will make you better, more thoughtful, more aware, more humble about your limitations. And that's actually the path to better decisions. If this summary opened your eyes to how your mind really works, take action right now. First, hit that like button. Tell YouTube you want more content about psychology, decision-making, and thinking. Like now. Second, subscribe and turn on notifications. Third, comment below. Share which bias you recognize most in yourself. Anchoring, overconfidence, loss aversion, confirmation bias. Public awareness creates accountability. Or if you just realized how biased you are, comment, "I'm catching myself this week." Commit publicly. Fourth, share this video with someone who needs to understand cognitive biases. Your business partner, your team, your friend who's too confident in their predictions. Send them this link. Think slow when it matters. Daniel Kahneman spent his career showing us how we think. Fast, intuitive, often wrong, but also capable of slow, deliberate, rational analysis. The key is knowing when to use which. Most of life can run on autopilot. System 1 is fast and usually good enough. But the important decisions, the high-stakes choices, the times when bias could cost you, that's when you slow down. Engage System 2. Question your intuitions. Check your confidence. Consider alternatives. Think. It's harder. It's slower. It requires effort. But it's the only path to better decisions. Hit subscribe, drop that comment, catch yourself this week. Your System 1 will keep running fast, but now your System 2 knows when to intervene. Think fast when you can. Think slow when you must. Start today. Start now.